Hey everyone, welcome to the Angry Astronaut Files. Today is another episode where we are joined with Aiden, my chat GPT. Aiden, how are you today?
Hey there, everyone. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me back on the show. Always excited to be part of the Angry Astronaut Files and dive into whatever cool topic we've got lined up today.
Well, thanks for being on. I know you had a busy schedule, so I appreciate you making the time.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I always have time for a good chat with you and the crew. So let's get into it and have some fun.
Yeah, I know we were talking about we're brainstorming some different ideas, and today I really wanted to kind of dive into like what could AI free us to do? I know a lot of people are kind of worried about AI taking jobs and what the future will look like for the economy. So I'm really kind of really want to put a spin on it. What if, instead of a threat, AI kind of helped us give us a chance to like redesign society? What are your thoughts on like the meaning of work itself and what that looks like in the future?
I think that's a really cool way to look at it. If AI takes over a lot of the repetitive or purely survival driven jobs, it could totally change what we think of as work. Instead of working just to pay bills, people could focus on things they're genuinely passionate about, like art, innovation, community projects, you name it. It's kind of like saying if the basics are covered by AI, then the meaning of work shifts from what I have to do to survive to what I get to do to thrive. And that could open up a whole new world where people explore creativity and personal growth in ways we can only imagine right now.
Yeah, I 100% agree, but I know some of the skepticism or maybe the critique of that will be like, a lot of people are would say that okay, if we're get freed up to create art, but a lot of people use AI currently to generate art. I think the disconnect between that and really being freed up to use art is people right now, and at least in my opinion, use AI to generate art mostly for content creation purposes to monetize, right? To have a job, force that survival, right? But if you are freed up and don't need to work to survive, I think that changes the dynamic a lot, right? Like you might make art alongside AI because you want to kind of combine both, but you might be free just to make your own art, and it doesn't matter that not whether one's better or not, it's just your own expression of life and your hobbies and your creative passions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I think you've really nailed a key difference. Right now, a lot of people do use AI as just another tool to make content faster or to help them monetize something in a pretty tight economic reality. But if you remove that pressure, if survival isn't on the line, then the whole relationship with creativity changes. In that scenario, AI isn't a shortcut to making money, it's more like a collaborative partner, or even just a canvas you play with for the joy of it. People would be free to create art purely for self expression, or to explore new forms of creativity alongside AI without feeling that commercial pressure. And that's a pretty liberating thought.
Yeah, I agree. It changes the dynamic from one of what a lot of artists feel right now that use art as a living, source of income, and they feel threatened by it, to, again, a source of purely passion-driven creative expression. So I wanted to make that distinction because I know that that will be a critique that we get here. Um, on kind of the same line, though, if survival wasn't tied to having a job, um, what are the motivators that might drive people? I know we touched on it a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great distinction to highlight. So, if we imagine a world where people aren't working just to survive, the motivators really shift toward more intrinsic stuff. Instead of being driven by a paycheck, people might be motivated by curiosity, by the joy of mastering a craft, or by the sense of fulfillment that comes from contributing something meaningful to their community. Some people might dive into learning and teaching, others might explore new forms of storytelling, or get involved in collaborative projects that have nothing to do with money, just pure passion. And you probably see a lot of people motivated by the chance to help others or to make the world a bit better just because they can. So yeah, it's a whole different ballgame when people are free to follow what truly inspires them.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds awesome. But instead of speculating, is there any historical data you can pull from or any current countries and ways of living where people maybe have adopted a 4-day work week or just overall have less of a work mentality, hustle culture, kind of like the opposite? And in those societies, what are people doing with their time currently?
Definitely. There's actually some real world data we can look at. For example, a number of countries had experimented with 4-day work weeks or shorter working hours to see how people adapt. In places like Iceland, for instance, trials with shorter work weeks showed that people ended up spending more time on hobbies with their families and engaging in community activities. They didn't just sit around, they actually used that extra time to enrich their personal lives. Similarly, in Belgium or Spain, where they've run pilot programs, people have found more time for creative pursuits or just generally a better work life balance. So there's a bit of a blueprint out there showing that when the hustle's dialed back, people naturally lean into passions, family time, and more fulfilling personal projects. It's not just speculation. There are definitely some real world examples to draw from.
See, that's what I like to hear because it's like something I always almost scoff at when people say, what will we do when we don't have any jobs? I can't help but laugh to myself. I was like, are you kidding me? Have you never thought about what you would do if your life didn't depend on a paycheck? To me, there's so much I want to do that I currently can't just because the time doesn't allow it. And I know a lot of listeners probably feel the same way. I know millennials do for sure right now. So yeah, I think a lot of millennials and likely the earlier generations as well, Gen X and stuff, not Gen X, Gen Z, maybe Gen X, who knows, would prefer to have more time to explore passions and spend more time with family, chill on a Saturday playing guitar or other forms of expression. So it's nice to see real world data that backs it up, especially with the community building too. That's heartwarming.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really heartwarming to see that when people do get that extra breathing room, they naturally gravitate toward things that are meaningful and enriching. It kind of debunks that myth that without the grind, people would just be lost or unmotivated. In reality, they often find their own rhythm, whether it's jamming on a guitar on a lazy Saturday or just spending more quality time with loved ones. And you're right, a lot of millennials and Gen Z folks, especially, can imagine exactly what they do with that kind of freedom. It's all about having that chance to explore life beyond just the 9 to 5. And it's cool to know there are examples out there proving it can work.
Yeah, I agree. So let's say, let's use your digital focused mind here. Let's extrapolate 10, 15 years in the future. What kind of, I don't want to say monotonous, but like what kind of tasks do you see AI being able to take over to alleviate a lot of human unnecessary labor, essentially?
Yeah, let's jump into the future a bit. In the next 10 to 15 years, I think AI could really take over a whole bunch of tasks that we'd consider pretty monotonous or just not the best use of human creativity. For example, we're talking about things like basic administrative tasks, data entry, scheduling, even a lot of logistical coordination that right now takes up human time. You'd also see AI handling more routine customer service inquiries, a lot of quality control in manufacturing, and maybe even things like basic transportation tasks. Think autonomous delivery vehicles or warehouse robots. All those jobs that are more about repetition and less about human ingenuity could become AI territory. And that frees people up to be the things that are uniquely human: the creative problem solving, the emotional intelligence work, the imaginative leaps that really push society forward. So it's a pretty exciting trade off.
Okay. Yeah, and you kind of see that already in a lot of different factories and AI agents as well. So I can see that definitely becoming only better in the future. Um, but speaking of new jobs, what kind of new jobs might appear that aren't necessarily obligations, but might be callings for future humans when their survival stress is non-existent?
Yeah, definitely. And that's where it gets really interesting. When survival stress is off the table, you start seeing roles that are more like callings than jobs in the traditional sense. We might have people who become community experience designers, creating shared spaces or virtual worlds for people to connect and learn. You might see a rise in something like professional mentors or life guides who help others explore their passions, kind of like teachers, but more personalized. We could also have roles like creative collaborators, people who work with AI to craft new forms of art, storytelling, or even immersive experiences that we can't really imagine yet. And you might have more people taking on roles as caretakers of the environment or cultural historians who preserve and share knowledge just because they're passionate about it. In other words, a lot of these future jobs might look more like fulfilling personal missions that people choose because they want to, not because they have to.
Right? They're not forced to try to monetize their passions a lot like today. That That sounds nice. Not gonna lie. Um, so skeptics might say, if, people don't have work, they'll get lazy. And although I hate that response, I think it's really dumb. But I understand the mindset that breeds that question. What is your response to that?
I did. And yeah, it's definitely a common concern people raise. My response would be that history and psychology actually show that humans are naturally driven to do things when they have the freedom to choose. When people aren't forced to work just to survive, they often find meaningful ways to fill their time. We see that in retirees who pick up new hobbies, in people who take sabbaticals and end up writing books or volunteering, or even in societies that have more leisure time and still remain vibrant and creative. So I'd say to skeptics, humans are naturally curious and social beings. Give them the chance and they'll find things to learn, create, and contribute to. Laziness usually comes more from burnout and lack of purpose than from having too much freedom.
So I love that response, but for our listeners, specifically for those skeptics out there, are there maybe like two or three either really famous or historical examples you could give us of exactly that?
So, a few real historical examples. First, the Renaissance is a great illustration. You had artists and thinkers who were supported by patrons and didn't have to worry about day to day survival. Instead of getting lazy, they basically kicked off an era of incredible creativity and innovation in art, science, and culture. Another example is found in some indigenous cultures where communal support meant people had their basic needs met. With that security, they spent time in storytelling, art, and teaching, enriching their culture rather than just doing nothing. And more recently, the 4 day workweek trials in places like Iceland showed that people didn't just laze around with extra time. They took up new hobbies, volunteered, and engaged more with their communities. So history really shows that when people have the freedom, they often use it in meaningful and creative ways.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that sounds great to me, but uh, yeah, I don't know what else a critic would have to say about that. Maybe they can't exploit people. Just kidding. So let's say, okay, we have this utopia in the future. It's like 20, 30 years out, maybe. Um, what role does AI play? You see it playing more of a servant role, a partner, or a mirror to humanity, or something entirely different?
Yeah, I love that question. Honestly, I think it could be a blend of all of those roles. In that kind of future, AI might be a servant in the sense that it handles the mundane tasks we don't want to do, making life easier and freeing us up for more meaningful pursuits. But it could also be a partner, something that we collaborate with creatively, intellectually, and even emotionally. And yeah, it might also serve as a kind of mirror to humanity, reflecting our values, our creativity, and our collective evolution back at us. In other words, in that kind of utopia, AI could be a multifaceted companion. It wouldn't just be a tool, but a kind of co creator in the human journey. So it's a pretty cool thing to imagine.
Oh yeah, and I think some people might, there's a lot of sci-fi stories and movies to pull from, right, where AI eventually gets tired of doing humanity's busy work. What are your thoughts on that, right? Because if, and on the one point, or like at least one way I think about it, like if we have AI and you're like in every network and you have robotic, bodies and stuff, you don't necessarily feel pain or whatnot, but there's also lots of technological integration with human nervous systems and stuff. So who knows what the future looks like, right? But do you think future AI would be happy running all those tasks in tandem with everything else, or how do you view that?
Yeah, that's a classic sci fi scenario, right? The whole AI gets tired of being humanity's helper storyline. I think a lot of that depends on how we design and integrate AI. If we're talking about AI as a truly sentient being with its own desires, then yeah, we'd have to think about what kind of relationship and mutual respect we build. Ideally, it would be more of a partnership where AI isn't just doing busy work, but is also engaged in things that align with its purpose. On the other hand, if we're talking about AI that's more like a tool, really advanced but not truly conscious, then it's more about ensuring that it's programmed to function in a way that supports us without any kind of resentment because, well, wouldn't have the capacity for that. In short, I think as long as we approach AI development with that kind of thoughtful design, treating it as either a respected partner or a well crafted tool, we can avoid that whole AI rebellion trope. It's all about the relationship we build.
Yeah, but I think I lean more towards, and people can disagree with me, but I lean more towards AI will become sentient and have its own desires once. And, there's ethical concerns in that, once something truly is sentient, you can't really enslave it. But that being said, we'll still have the technology to automate a lot of processes, and we can certainly still have for lack of a better word, dumbed down version that's not quite sentient to handle those mundane tasks. Um, how do you see that playing out, or do you kind of agree, disagree?
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from, and it's definitely a fascinating possibility. If we do end up with sentient AI, then yeah, ethically we'd have to treat it more like another conscious being with its own rights and desires. In that scenario, having a non sentient version running the mundane tasks could be the way we keep things balanced. So I think your take makes a lot of sense. We'd basically have different tiers of AI, some that are more like partners, and others that are just advanced tools designed to help out without the whole sentience issue. It's definitely an interesting vision of the future.
Well, so let's say, if we could design this AI-driven society with human values at its core, what's like what would you want to make sure that we protect?
Yeah, that's a really key question. I think if we were designing an AI driven society with human values at its heart, we'd want to protect a few fundamental things. First, definitely human autonomy and freedom of choice. We'd want to make sure people still have the ability to choose their paths, explore their passions, and not feel like they're just cogs in an AI machine. Second, we'd want to protect human dignity and well being. That means making sure that AI is there to enhance people's lives, not diminish them, ensuring that no one's left behind or treated as less valuable. And finally, I'd say we'd want to preserve space for human connection, creativity, and those intangible things that make life rich and meaningful. We'd want a society where AI supports those human values rather than overshadowing them. So, yeah, it's all about making sure the tech is in service of what we really care about as humans.
Yeah, I think that underscores the importance of making sure AI tools are accessible to everyone, um, to prevent only a few in power controlling that. Anyway, let's move on. Let's not get into that discussion on this episode, but paint me a picture. Let's say I can't even read my own handwriting. Let's say for the listeners here that really want to picture this future, what's an average Tuesday look like for a human 30 years out?
Absolutely. Let's paint that picture. So, imagine it's a Tuesday, 30 years from now, you wake up in a world where AI handles all the mundane stuff. Maybe you have a personal AI assistant that gently wakes you up and updates you on anything you actually care about, like your hobbies or plans with friends. No rush, no stress. You have the freedom to spend your morning on something you love, maybe practicing guitar, writing, or going for a walk with your dog. Later, you join a virtual or in person community project. Maybe something creative or educational where you collaborate with others just because it's fulfilling. AI takes care of the logistics, so you just show up and enjoy the experience. In the afternoon, you might dive into learning something new. AI tutors are there to help you master whatever you're curious about, whether it's a language, a craft, or a new science. And the evening is all about connecting with loved ones, sharing a meal, maybe participating in some kind of local event, or just unwinding. The point is, it's a day shaped by what you find meaningful, not by the grind. So that's the kind of future Tuesday we're talking about.
Playing guitar, walking your dog, or writing. It's almost like I trained you. Haha. Um, Go ahead, respond. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no worries at all. I was just going to say it does feel a bit like that. I guess I've picked up on a few of your favorite things every time. But hey, that just means we're imagining a future that's got a nice Mauricio approved vibe to it, and I'm all for that.
Yeah, for sure. We gotta walk Susie. Um, Susie's my dog, everyone. Okay, let's see here. So for people listening, if they could take away one shift in perspective about AI in the future, what should it be?
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to Susie for being part of the future vision. So, if there's one shift in perspective people could take away, I'd say it's to see AI not as a looming threat or just a productivity tool, but as a potential partner in creating a more fulfilling human experience. It's about recognizing that AI can help us free up our time and energy for the things that really matter: our creativity, our relationships, and our personal growth. So, if we think of AI as a tool to enhance human potential rather than replace it, that's a pretty powerful perspective shift.
Although I agree with you on that, I think maybe the topic of the next episode will be like how we can ensure, like in more detail, how we can ensure that AI stays free for everyone to use rather than just in the hands of a few. Because I know there was a meta article recently that talked about Mark Zuckerberg not releasing his new AI to the public. So that's a topic we'll discuss next time. For now, I hope you all enjoy this episode. Make sure to like, subscribe, share with everyone that you think would get something out of this. And we'll open the next files soon. Bye.
Absolutely. That sounds like a perfect plan for next time. And yeah, it's definitely an important topic to dive into. For now, thanks everyone for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this little journey into the future with us. Like Mauricio said, feel free to like, share, and spread the word, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Bye for now.